Today, we're going to go through the 5 ways to improve your playing in your non-dominant hand, which for 90% of us is going to be the left hand. We're going to talk about the single action, the most important action that you can take to improve the balance between your hands on your journey to becoming more ambidextrous. And finally, we're going to ask the irrelevant but very interesting question: as a pianist, is it better to be left-handed or right-handed? The first step, and don't skip this one, is to write down your strengths and weaknesses in both of your hands. So this may present itself really obviously. You might be so obviously weaker in one hand than the other, or it might be, especially if you practice for many years, a little bit more subtle. So for instance, you might be better at playing chords in the left hand, as I am, and more intricate fast passages in your right hand. If there's an obvious weakness, then dedicate every other session of your practice routine to scales, arpeggios, exercises, focusing solely on that hand. Step 2 is mirroring. Now, if there's anything that I wish somebody had taught me sooner, it's this. Whenever we're learning a physical movement, it is the feeling of that movement that we need to learn and remember. And here's what I realized: if you can make a movement in one hand, then that hand can teach the other hand to replicate that movement by knowing how it feels. It's almost like doing it in reverse. This can be anything. It's how you do a jump or how your fingers move. If you can do it in one hand, try to teach the other hand what that one does and replicate the movement. Okay, consider these 3 things. As we mentioned earlier, 90% of people are left-handed. Secondly, most music that is written by right-handed people for the right hand in terms of fast, intricate, difficult passages. And thirdly, in terms of the keyboard layout, these passages tend to be written in the higher registers. These 3 reasons, and there are probably more, mean that there are many more pieces that give the right hand the harder part than the left hand. So step 3 is this, and it's super important. Don't shy away from pieces that have difficult left hand parts, and actually actively seek them out. So there is a way to take step 3 a little bit further, and that's where Paul Wittgenstein comes in. So Wittgenstein was a pianist who very sadly lost his right arm in the First World War. But rather than stop his musical career, he continued and he commissioned works from Ravel and Prokofiev solely for the left hand. Wittgenstein's story is really interesting. He never played the concerto that he commissioned from Prokofiev, and for Ravel, well, he changed his concerto just before the premiere, which made Ravel really angry. Back to the steps, and this is step 4 and the most important action that you can take, and it's to find a left hand piece and fit this into the pieces portion of your routine. Speaking of a practice routine, if you're not sure what to practice when you sit at the piano, then download the 60-minute routine that will help you to know exactly what to play and what to practice when you sit at the piano. It's full of book recommendations and you can download it from the link in the description below. On to step 5. Unless you're already really very much ambidextrous, then if I asked you to write a word in your non-dominant hand, then it might look something like this. If I asked you to write it 99 more times though, it will slowly start to improve. Unlike with writing, where we can choose which hand we want to write with, we have to use both when it comes to playing the piano. So spend the time and the focus on improving the balance between your hands. Now on to the interesting question of whether it's better to be left-handed or right-handed as a pianist. Not that we have a choice. You might think that given that most challenging music is written for the right hand, that it would be better to be right-handed, and being left-handed would put you at an enormous disadvantage here. However, Beethoven, it's said, Mozart, Rachmaninoff, and even pianists like Horowitz, Barenboim, and Gould were all left-handed. So this is my take on this. Now, I'm not left-handed, but what I've seen with my students is that those who are left-handed constantly have to work on their right hand. They live in a right-hand world, and in a world where most music, most challenging music, is written for the right hand. That means they're constantly being challenged, and they're constantly leveling up their skills in their right hand. It's easier if you're right-handed to get away with ignoring difficult and tricky left-hand parts, which means that you become more unbalanced. You need to actively, if you're right-handed, seek these out in order to improve, whereas the left-handed pianist is having to improve. This means that on balance, left-handed pianists tend to be more balanced between the hands, but that this is only down to practice. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. We touched earlier on the 60-minute routine and inputting our practice, our left-hand practice, into it. If you want a guide through this routine, check out the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you there.